What's up, y'all, and welcome to Bible Study, baby, for the biblically uneducated and the slightly unhinged. Today, we're going to be in pages 152 to 157 in the Bible study book, which is just John 9 in the Bible. But anyway, we all know why we're here. Let's just get started. So we start off with Jesus and his disciples. They walking down the street and they see this man and he blind. So the disciples, they looked at Jesus and they was like, be real, who was sinning? Because if he was born blind, either him, his mama, or his daddy had to be sinners. So who was it? And Jesus was like, actually, nobody. Nobody sinned. What really happened was God did that so people could see God work through him. So then Jesus, he walked up to the man, he spit on the ground. He made mud out of it and put it on that man's eyes. Then he told him to go somewhere else to go wash it off. That's exactly what the blind man did. He walked all the way over to where Jesus told him to go. He washed the mud off his face, and for the very first time, he could see. So at this point, I'm thinking he's skipping through the neighborhood. He looking at the birds, he looking at the sky, he's enjoying his newfound vision. But the people in the neighborhood, they remember this man. He was just blind and just begging. So they was conflicted. So when they seen him, they like, ain't that old boy that was just begging a couple hours ago? I know I passed by him, he was begging. And some people was like, I think that is that man. That got to be him. But then you got other people that was like, nah, that can't be him. That got to be somebody that looked like him. So he had to clear it up. He was like, first of all, I'm right here. Second of all, I was begging. I was blind. But now I'm not. So he told them like, yeah, I am that man. They was like, well, if you that man, how you seeing? Because you was blind just a minute ago. So he told him what happened. He's like, bro, this man ain't Jesus. He came by, put some mud on my eyes, told me to go wash it off. I washed it off. I could see. So at this point, they like, nah, I need to see this man. Where he at? And a formerly blind man was like, I don't know nothing about none of that. All I know is I can see right now. But then that's where it get extra messy. So they bring him to the Pharisees, right? And the Pharisees are the Jewish leaders. They basically the ones that's supposed to know God better than anybody. They got all the scrolls. They worship the God that Moses worshiped. Like they really own that. So they bring this guy to the Pharisees. And the Pharisees, who obviously had to see this man blind at some point in time, they asked him the same thing the people in the neighborhood was asking him. Like, how are you seeing right now? And he told them the same story he told the people in the neighborhood. Jesus came, put mud on my eyes, I washed it off, I could see. But that wasn't making no sense to them because they was like, we know that Jesus is a sinner. They've been trying to build this case against him so that they can eventually, well, you know how the story ended. They got him popped. But this is how they built the case. They started building the case in places like this. When Jesus healed that blind man, he healed him on the Sabbath. So they saw opportunity. You ain't supposed to be working, healing, doing none of that stuff on the Sabbath. So when they heard it, they was like, see, I told y'all that man wasn't from God. Because he out here doing all this on the Sabbath? The holy Sabbath? So of course they haters. So they looking for any reason to hate. They like, nah, everybody know you ain't supposed to be working like that on the Sabbath. But then some of them couldn't let their bias win. And they was like, I feel that. Like, you're not supposed to really be like working on the Sabbath. But I ain't never seen a sinner do nothing like that. So at this point they divided. So they asked old boy, it's like, look, you the one that got healed. What you think? And he was like, I think he a prophet. Like he gotta be. Like at this point, nah, I know this man is a prophet. But mind you, they don't want to hear that. They still don't like this man. And that's not adding to the narrative that they trying so hard to hold on to. But the blind man that said already he a prophet. He think he the prophet. And he was supposed to be the tiebreaker. So they was like, you know what? He probably not even blind anyway. Let's go talk to his parents. So they bring his parents in. And they like, look, is this your son? And if this is your son, was he really blind from birth? And if he was blind, how is he healed right now? And they was like, look, that is our son. He was born blind, but we don't know nothing about all that healing stuff. You got to ask him. He grown. And mind you, the parents knew exactly what happened. Everybody knew what happened. But they wasn't about to tell the Pharisees that. The Jewish leaders already told everybody. If you want to recognize Jesus as the Messiah, you getting kicked out of the synagogue. Because if you want to worship Jesus, you can worship outside. So of course his parents wasn't about to tell him what they really thought happened. Because they was like, shoot, if he want to get kicked out, he can get kicked out. But y'all ain't about to get us kicked out of our good synagogue. So that's why they told him like, yo, ask him. He grown. So now they like, I bet. They done brought him in a second time. So you can see at this point, he's probably a little irritated. He's trying to use his new eyesight to look at anything other than the Pharisees. But they done called him in again. And they like, yo, tell the truth, shame the devil. We know this man is a sinner. And the man was like, look, I don't care whether he is a sinner or not. I don't know whether he is a sinner or not. That ain't got nothing to do with me. All I know is that he healed me. That's it. That's all. So they asked him again, well, what did he do? How are you seeing? He was like, ooh. He's like, bro, I done already told y'all not listening. Y'all done heard from my parents. And now y'all done called me back in here again and asked me the same question. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? You want to be his disciples too or something? And the Pharisees ain't like that. They ain't like that at all. And it was like, disciple of Jesus? We ain't no... We ain't about to be no disciples of Jesus. We don't know who that man is. We don't know where he come from. We don't know who he worship. You know who we are disciples of? Moses. Moses spoke to God and God spoke to Moses. We don't know nothing about this Jesus. So the blind man was like, that's wild. You don't know nothing about him. You don't know where he come from, but he out here healing blindness. If he was a sinner, how can he do that? Because y'all know better than anybody that if he wasn't from God, he couldn't do all that. He got to be sent from God. And they ain't like that. Because again, it didn't go with the narrative they was trying to paint about this man. So they're like, you know what? Shut up. You steeped in sin anyway. Get out. So when Jesus heard they kicked him out, he went to go find him. And I honestly think he went to go find him simply just because that represented everything that Jesus came for. Jesus came to make sure that demons don't feel comfortable around you. Because the Pharisees kicking him out was basically like him getting kicked out of the devil's den. It's like when you get baptized. When you get baptized, you're publicly saying, I follow Jesus. I know Jesus is real. I know Jesus is the Son of God. You stepping about Jesus. So Jesus went to go find him. You stepped so hard that they done kicked you out. They don't like me either. Don't worry about it. My enemies should be your enemies. Because if you cool sitting with the devil, you obviously don't want to sit with me. So when Jesus found him, Jesus was like, I see you got kicked out. You believe in the Son of Man? And he was like, I don't know who that is, but if you point me in that direction, I will believe in him. Because mind you, he remembering that voice. That was the same voice attached to his healing. So now when you hearing this voice that's been attached to your healing, that's the voice you're going to follow. So Jesus took that opportunity to be like, I'm him. Like, I'm the Son of Man. So the man that was blind was like, Lord, I believe. And he immediately started worshiping Jesus. And Jesus was like, yeah, I came to make sure that the blind would see and those that already see would become blind. And of course, here go the haters, aka the Pharisees. They was like, so what you saying? You calling us blind? And Jesus was like, well, if the shoe fits. Okay, he didn't really say that. He didn't say that for real. He said, if you were blind, you wouldn't be guilty of sin. But because you claim that you can see already, you and sin looking real familiar and you're guilty. But that part stood out to me. Jesus said, I came to make sure that the blind would see, but I also came to make sure that those who already see are blind. And then he gave an example, which is the Pharisees. And throughout the entire story, you can see that happening. But with all that, the question right now is, what do you see and where are you seeing it from? Because everybody saw something different. Everybody had a different perspective and everybody went about what they saw a different way. Like you can see everybody's perception determining their reality. Like let's start with the disciples. The disciples, what did they see? They walk up on a man, they see he was born blind. Their immediate thought was either he was a sinner or his parents had to be sinners. But that's where people get stuck, thinking that they know everything. Because this person that heard it from this person, that heard it from this person, that heard it from this person, you got stuff passed down from generation to generation, and now that's treated as law. But you can't dare to be different when you listening to the lies of everybody else. The walk with Jesus is the walk of being different, the walk of seeing different, and the walk of seeing the truth. So you have to be open to Jesus changing your mind. They immediately seen this man and was like, yeah, he getting punished. And if we being real, that's how rumors start. One person told another person and told another person, told another person, and now everybody believe it. But that don't always make it true. That's why the best thing that they could have ever did was ask Jesus. Instead of just skating with that narrative, they asked Jesus. They said, hey, look, we know what happened, but what actually happened? So then Jesus was able to correct their mindset, saying, hey, I know what you heard, I know what you believe already, but that's not always the case. Because sometimes you do look at people's life and you be like, dang, what did they do? Shoot, I've done it to myself a couple times. But sometimes God is just using you for a greater purpose. It's not always punishment. And the only thing I can really think about when it comes to that is with celebrities. You look at one celebrity and you see where they're at right now. But if you look at their story and how they got to where they got, it don't look nothing like where they at. You'll find out they've been homeless, they've been less than broke, like they've literally looked like somebody had to have sinned. Like let's take Tyler Perry. Tyler Perry has been broke, homeless, sleeping in his car, and even after success, he wasn't broke, but he still ain't have it like that. That's why he used to always tell people stop bootlegging his DVDs. But let's be real, that type of stuff is not really for them, that's for other people. Because through their story, you can see what mistakes they made so that you would never make them again. And you can also see what steps they took that you want to take yourself. All that stuff is usually for a reason, and most of the things that happen to you aren't for you. They might be to better you, but you being a better person means you're better than everybody else. Sometimes, like the man that was born blind, God is just using you for something way bigger than yourself. And that's how the disciples learned. They needed to learn that lesson so they could teach that lesson. Because that's where generational curses stop. But yeah, then what happened? After Jesus had taught them that very valuable lesson, he then went to go spit on the ground, pick up that mud, and put it on that man's eyes. I said, Jesus, why would you do that? That is spitting, because I couldn't believe it. I said, not my Lord and Savior. Because that is the dirtiest, nastiest, most disrespectful thing you could do to somebody. And I feel like Jesus was like, exactly. It is, right? This man been blind his whole life. Think of the stuff that you've had your whole life. Sometimes it get real ugly before it get beautiful. And it's even worse if it's generational. Let's be real. It's like an addiction that's been going on from generation to generation to generation. Now it's done hit you. If it didn't hit you, you couldn't break it. And also, you wouldn't be able to help the next generations if they so happen to fall into that addiction. Sometimes it just has to get messy. Some of that stuff, if Jesus broke it off of you without having you go through the messy parts, it would do you a disservice. And not only you a disservice, everybody that's attached to you a disservice. Because sometimes you are blind. You blind to certain stuff. So God got to put that mud on so that you understand that you're not seeing properly. Because sometimes God got to blur your vision so that later on you can see clearly. Because let's be real, you're not blind. You done DoorDash 8 times this week, but you don't have 8 times worth of DoorDash in your account like that. You saw you spend the money. In the moment, you was straight, but you was blind to how much you was really spending. Because now you done spent that money, you got to sit in the dark. And that's the moment where Jesus could show you that you need to start budgeting. Jesus got to blur your vision a little bit so you looking straight at DoorDash and not at all the bills you got to pay. But now you sitting in the dark, you can understand that you got a problem. But that's what I had to figure out for it to make sense to me. Because honestly, I couldn't get past the fact that he put all that spit and dirt on that man's eyes. To me, that was too far. But just like with addiction, sometimes God got to take it a little bit too far or let you take it a little bit too far so that you can be able to see clearly in the end. But let's keep it pushing. Now we get to the actual man. This man didn't see from his limiting beliefs. Yes, it did get a little ugly before it got beautiful. But if he saw things the way the disciples seen them, he would have never gotten healed. Because let's be real. First and foremost, before Jesus even touched him, he had no reason to believe he was going to be healed. He's never seen somebody born blind be healed. He's never seen it. So his limiting belief would have been, you can't heal me because it's not possible. And then let's go further. Jesus never told him that he'd be healed. All Jesus said was, go to the pool of Siloam, which is a place he washed off. Go to the pool of Siloam and wash your eyes off. He never said it would heal him. So where the disciples in his case only saw their limiting beliefs, the blind man saw faith, hope, and curiosity. There's no other explanation other than he believed from the jump that he would be healed. He felt like this would work in some way, shape, or form. Because for you to just let a random man, I know you hear that spit. For you to hear a random man spit on the ground, take that and put it on your eyes and tell you to go somewhere, and you walk there, there has to be a certain level of curiosity, faith, and belief right there. You believe that something good was going to happen to you at the end of this. And Jesus always says stuff like your faith has made you heal, or your faith has healed you, or something like that. So in that, his faith was genuinely what healed him. His curiosity to say, okay, well, let's try this. He's probably been to doctor after doctor. He's probably tried medicine after medicine. And let's be real, if the rumor is, if your son is blind, that means either he sinned or y'all sinned. He a baby, so that's looking bad on y'all. So they probably went through every measure to try to clear their name. He was probably used to people trying different stuff and experimenting on him. But I'm quite sure he ain't never experienced nothing like this. He had to not only have that mud on his face, mud on your face, you big disgrace, and all over the place. Oh, wow. The disgrace. Oh, he washed off his disgrace. Oh, okay, hold up. So Jesus put mud on his face, probably to also represent that his family was in disgrace. Because they were. So when he washed that off, he washed off not only his ailment, but he washed off not only his ailment, he washed off every disgraceful thing anybody's ever said about him or did to him. He didn't just clear his vision, he cleared his name. Oh, Jesus is so thorough. Jesus is so thorough. I done got off on a tangent, but Jesus is so thorough. Wow. There's legit always a method to the madness when it comes to Jesus. But then let's keep going. Because now we get to the people in the neighborhood. The people in the neighborhood saw something totally different than the man that was blind and saw something totally different than the disciples. The people in the neighborhood saw from what they saw. So the disciples going based off things that they thought they knew. Things that they was told, things that was passed down from generation to generation, things like little superstitions or something like that. That's what they was moving off of. But these people in the neighborhood, they had just seen that man. He was blind when they just saw him. But now all of a sudden, he looking at me like he could see me. Something has shifted. Because at this point, what happened? Were you lying the entire time? Were my eyes deceiving me? Or are you really healed right now? The people saw him, but because he didn't look like what they were used to, they ain't believe it was him. Some people can't see you because they already saw you. They remember when you was back here. They remember when you was over here. They remember when you was doing this. They remember when you was dancing butt naked. They remember when you was in a club every week. They remember when every time they see you, you had to be smoking. They remember when you was drinking like crazy. They remember when you was popping it for everybody who asked. Like, they remember that person, so they can't see past that person because they remember the blind man. So when they seen that he was able to see, it wasn't registering that it was actually him. They told themselves that can't be true. But sometimes you don't just change physically. You change spiritually, emotionally, mentally. And some people can't handle it because it's not what they're used to. It's not what they used to seeing from you. And some people can accept it, but some people gonna reject that. If the whole friendship was y'all going out and partying, and now you don't go out and you don't party, if every time y'all get together y'all smoking, but you trying not to smoke no more, I mean, it's not looking like much of a friendship. You might distance yourself just a little bit. They were blind to who he was because they were so focused on who he used to be. He started to see, and then they became blind. And some people can't recognize you because you've grown from the place that they found you at. Which is then what brought us to the Pharisees. Because the same vibes that the man neighbors had for him is the same vibes that the Pharisees had for Jesus. Jesus has healed somebody of whole blindness, and they so caught up on making him look bad, they have to find something. So what did they find? That he did it on a Sabbath. They're not looking at the amazingly beautiful thing that he's done. They're not trying to see him past what they already think about him. And it's like, yo, they ended up being the sole reason for this man getting executed. Because they couldn't see past their own bias. Because for the people in the neighborhood, it was just what they're used to. They were used to seeing him like that. So of course when they see him again, they're like, oh, you've changed. But from the Pharisees, it was coming from a dark place. They were blinded by jealousy because to them, they were in charge of everything godly. They were supposed to be the ones that people look up to. It's not that they couldn't see Jesus. It's that they didn't want to. And they try at every step of the way to not see him for who he was. Jesus healed somebody, they didn't see it. They only saw that he did it on a Sabbath. Now, the person that he healed come in, they said, nah, he gotta be lying. He probably wasn't blind for real. Now they done sent in this man parents. The man parents is shaking in their boots because they feel like they about to get kicked out the synagogue for that even being their son. But they done brought him in. Why? Because they trying to prove some type of point, and they trying to get something behind them that says that Jesus is the person that they feel like he is. And then after that, they called the man back in. And they asked him again what happened. He done just told them what happened. At one point, they asked him for his opinion and still told him he was wrong because his opinion didn't match up to what they wanted to believe. They wanted to believe he was a sinner, he was never sent by God, he could never be sent by God, but they never even took the time to confirm their beliefs. Maybe he might be the Messiah, but they never took the time to actually think otherwise. And that's why God said the people that see will be blind. And that's why he also said that because they say they can see, they are guilty. They were supposed to be the religious leaders, but they were keeping people away from the person that they trying to lead people to. I.e., look at his poor parents. They had to deny the Son of God just to have a place they'd be able to worship God. Make it make sense. They seen that their son that they knew was blind since birth now has the ability to see. But their fear led them to give up an actual encounter with God for a perceived one. The Pharisees had them shook. They didn't want to claim Jesus because they were scared to get kicked out of church. Meanwhile, Jesus was the church. Fear literally takes away every ability to make something make sense. Because the Pharisees, who are supposed to be helping people get closer to Jesus, are the ones that's tearing Jesus down. But everybody shows something very valuable. How important it is to take things back to God. Because in every situation, there had to be confirmation. You have the disciples. They did it right. Now, they thought they knew everything, but they were open to realizing that that wasn't the case. And they went to Jesus and they let Jesus change their mindset on it. But then we got the people like the Pharisees. All they had to do was go to God and confirm. They were the religious leaders. If they would have just asked God, hey, is this your son? Is this the person we should worship? If they got curious and they said, and they took that back to God, instead of letting their jealousy talk, instead of letting their anger talk, instead of letting their emotions talk for them, they would have been able to go to God and actually get real answers. They would have known that Jesus actually was the Messiah. Because for them, he was just some sinner that was doing party tricks. But even when they saw that he was doing way more than party tricks, they still didn't believe. But it's not because they couldn't believe. It's because they didn't want to. They closed themselves off. They blinded themselves. And in other situations, the man that was blind acted as God would. Like in the neighborhood, when they were saying, oh, no, that can't be him. That's not him. He was blind. And he confirmed, he was like, I am the person that y'all talking about. That's what it looks like when you go to God. You have two conflicting opinions, two conflicting perceptions, and you don't know how to quite make sense of it. Take it to God. God will answer you and say, yeah, this is exactly what it is. Or absolutely not. That's not what it is. But then you got the parents. They also had that confirmation from God. They felt it. They knew it. But they let their fear override their faith. This was the thing that they've been waiting on forever. Them and the Pharisees, everybody has been waiting on this one man. And this one person shows up. And half the people don't even acknowledge them because of their fear, their bias, their jealousy, their anger, their preconceived notions that they already got about him. or who they think he should be, where they think he should come from, what they think he should look like. All that goes away when you seek further confirmation from God. And like the disciples, you get an actual answer. Not an answer rooted in fear, not an answer rooted in what you think, and sometimes not even rooted in anything inside of you. And then like the disciples, be willing to change your perspective. Because if your vision determines your reality, wouldn't you want it to be the correct one? But that's where our game of truth or dare come in. This week's dare, because we already know the truth, I dare you to take it back to God all week. Every feeling, every emotion, every thought, everything. If there are 2 or more opinions gathered, take it to God, so that he can put you on a path you should be on and give you the correct vision to stay on it. But let's recap just so you got what I got. Number 1, be able to see beyond your limiting beliefs. Because if nobody saw beyond their limiting beliefs, we would still be in the Stone Ages. There wouldn't be no NASA, there wouldn't be no spaceships, there wouldn't be innovation, and there wouldn't be no social media. See beyond superstition, see beyond what other people are saying, see beyond social media, even see beyond your own thought process. See beyond all those limiting beliefs, because all they're going to do is hold you back and or make you loud and wrong. But number 2, try to see things from a place of faith, hope, and curiosity. Because that blind man would have stayed that blind man if he wasn't curious enough to believe in something. He believed in that moment that he'd be healed. He had a certain level of curiosity that ended up being his saving grace. But number 3, just know that sometimes it's gonna get ugly before it gets beautiful. That one, that's self-explanatory. But that leads us to number 4. Change is one of the only things constant about life. Anybody and anyone can change. So always try to see beyond the past versions of yourself and others, so that you don't blind yourself in your current reality. Because nothing or nobody is supposed to stay the same forever. And number 5, don't let fear lead to forfeit. They literally forfeited the most beautiful thing they could have ever had in their life, a relationship with Jesus. And mind you, they forfeited it for the place where they could worship him. The amount of knowledge they could have learned in one day would have been worth them giving up the synagogue forever. They could have worshipped at the house. But they let their fear forfeit their blessings. They gave it up for something that they felt was better. But then we get to number 6. Don't be like the Pharisees. Don't let emotions like anger and jealousy corrupt your vision, because you don't want to be blinded by that. They ended up killing Jesus, and they too forfeited. But they didn't forfeit like the parents who forfeited because of fear. They forfeited their blessings because they let their emotions corrupt their vision. But that's why we got number 7. Take everything back to God. Take everything back to God so he can confirm or correct your vision. But more to the story, you ain't got to be blind to be blinded, and not everybody that see got the correct vision. So choose hope, faith, curiosity, and love so that you can keep your sight and not have to constantly worry about correcting your vision. And if you're struggling, Jesus gonna answer the call every time. But thank y'all so much for listening and for watching, and I am going to keep saying it. I need you to read the story. I am purposely leaving parts out so that you can go and read it for yourself. And if you have the Bible study book, that's all the more better. Because not only will you be able to read it, you got the summary. Then they give you their interpretation of what happened. A picture if you are artistic. And then they give you questions and they give you prayer at the end. I get something different than what this Bible study book get. And it's probably something totally different than what you would get when you read it in the Bible yourself. But regardless of whether you get the Bible study book or not, I will always be an advocate for you to read the verses yourself. Because I want you to always get what God has specifically for you. But yeah, that's just how I feel. For next week, we're going to be in pages, here it is, pages 88 to 93. But in the actual Bible, it's going to be 1 Samuel, all of the first chapter, and the second chapter only up until verse 10. So 1 Samuel 1 and 1 Samuel 2, verses 1 through 10. And please, while you're reading the first one, please read this one too. But regardless, I pray that y'all have an amazing day and even more incredible week. I love y'all, and I will see y'all next Saturday.